praised the benefits of the area, all provided by EJ. Articles set up the image of the non-ideal family, living in the non-ideal home in the non-ideal community. A child without parks, schools, carousels, planned neighborhoods with ideal homes is the boy who is left to amuse himself in the city streets, apt to pick up more bad tricks than good, and without a foundation of good habits, a man is not wanted by the average employer of labor. Lest we forget, Johnson has developed the town to serve the community, and the community in turn serves EJ. The unpaid domestic labor of working class women served in three ways: the maintenance of direct producers, the maintenance of non-laboring members of the subordinate class, and generational replacement. And I borrow from Vogel here, while they may also be direct producers, paid laborers that is, it is in their differential role in the reproduction of labor power that lies at the root of women's oppression in class society. The working class mother must raise her children to be employable. Leisure time and self-discipline are two sides of the same coin. How a man spends his time away from the factory determines his productivity within it. Self-discipline follows discipline, not punishment, in the sense of wait till your father gets home, but in the discipline derived from structure and rules that comes from obedience and deference, submission, if you will. The EJ Workers Review explains to mothers, while he, the child, is at that period of life where everything is new to him, it is the most impressive time of his life. While at home with his mother during the stages of infancy to youth and thence to manhood, he gains the supreme knowledge of all the world. All summed up can be expressed by the golden rule: do right. Each day means the forming of new impressions, and the permanent stamp is being shaped upon his little mind. The impression might better be good than bad. Speaking with discipline, it has its beginning with the infant. In fact, the whole period of childhood needs constant discipline, which is guidance and not punishment, surrounding him always with the guidance which will teach him the fundamental lessons of self-denial and, most of all, self-control. This will protect him from the formation of any bad habits. Working class mothers were on the hook for teaching their children the fundamental lessons of self-denial and, most of all, self-control. How to achieve this accomplishment? Utilize the EJ system of community benefits. The need for the wise use of leisure time or wholesome recreation for all is recognized here as evident from the fact that the EJ company adequately supports so many types of community services. The public library, the parks and playgrounds, the concerts, athletic meets, dramatics, sports, and other recreational features of Endicott and Johnson City are blazing a trail and making history. There was never any question but that the children born here would stay and work here. It was their birthright. From the time they came home from EJ hospitals with their $4 bank accounts, these children were trained to be industrial workers, punching the Bundy time clock and herded onto the factory floor to make shoes. Most importantly, they were raised to be obedient and loyal, self-disciplined. This lesson, learned early in life, will serve them well as part of the EJ Happy Family. The cover of this issue illustrates the paternal nature of the relationship between the workers and management as paralleled and reflected in the home between parent and child. The boy who will receive the lashing, who his friend is clearly preparing him for, has this look of resignation and defeat. No doubt the boy's feet, all three of which are front and center, are adorned with EJ shoes. George F. Johnson is the father to his workers, much in the way that the worker in this photo is the father to these boys. Be wary of the punishment that awaits the disloyal and the disgruntled. This paternal relation is not a one-way street, or not a one-way perception. Both publications routinely print letters or stories from workers that directly point out this relation. In more than one issue of the magazine and the review, Johnson directly tells the workers that if they think they can find a better job elsewhere, that they should do so. Better to leave than continue to complain and be the rotting apple in the barrel. Another way to put it, my roof, my rules. You don't like it, move up. And for the young girls, the Little Mothers League taught them all that they needed to know about their fate. In the Valley of Opportunity, girls were always already becoming mothers. Girls as young as 3 or 4 began helping their mothers to mind the younger children. This gave them a leg up when their formal training began a few years later, around age 10, when they joined the Little Mothers League. As explained in the second issue of the first volume of the EJ Workers Review, the object of this league is that the children may learn how to prepare food, how to keep the home clean, how to care for younger children in the home. They go over carefully the leaflets sent out by the State Department on how to care for babies, their food, preparation of food, care of milk, how to avoid infection, amusements for convalescent children, fuel and how to save it, right food for children, menus for children. They've carefully studied home sanitation and have listened carefully to the rules and regulations given to the village board about the governing the collection of garbage and ashes. Also, personal hygiene, care of teeth, bathing, eating, and drinking. The Little Mothers League was a New York State program that had begun in 1908 in the slums of New York City by Dr. S. Josephine Baker to reduce infant mortality rates among immigrants. This program ensures that young caregivers of even younger siblings will not inadvertently injure a baby. Second, it is a means by which the health department can disseminate information that might not otherwise reach the home. And of course, it teaches young girls to be wives and mothers in alignment with the industrial era, rather than to take advice from their maternal elders, which has been done for generations. In the Triple Cities, the Little Mothers League met at the Ideal Home, the Company Community Center located adjacent to the Ideal Library, both provided by George F. Johnson's generosity, which is pointed out at every mention of the league. The lessons are learned so well that several years later, in a 1924 issue, an article titled "I Am a Graduate" tells the tale of a young girl at the moving picture theater who admonishes the mother of a 1-year-old for bringing her infant to the show on the grounds that it is too late for the baby to be awake. The moving picture light is bad for the baby's eyes, and this child is not dressed properly. The young girl claims authority with the declaration, "I'm a graduate of the Little Mothers League." In addition to the Little Mothers League, members who numbered almost 700 in this area in 1923 are also part of the North Side Sewing class, making clothes which are distributed to the mothers who, through lack of time or other causes, are unable to fashion these little garments themselves. Here, the young working class girls-to-be mothers learn discipline and how to listen to the voices of authority over their own. This early training serves them well in their future roles as subordinates to the husbands and employers and the state. They in turn teach these lessons to their children, thus raising the next generation of subordinate working class girls to be mothers. Working class women worked in the factories and in the homes. They made shoes and they bore children to wear them, and those children would someday make shoes as well. George F. controlled working class women's paid productive labor in the factories outright and indoctrinated them in the ways of household reproductive labor through his workers' home buying program and 2 workers' journals. These written instructions in how to run a household and to reproduce EJ workers daily and generationally were forceful. Here are photos from the 1925 Labor Day Parade. George F. Johnson, front and center, is gazing upon the fruit of his labors. He has had the shaping of these working class women, the shaping of their lives and the ways that they run their households and raise those babies sitting on those laps. His gaze is policing, ensuring that they are all appropriately just so. His gaze is proprietary. As the sign says, these are EJ mothers and babies. There are up to 4 floats of these working class women and their future EJ workers displayed like circus animals in a cage. His gaze is proud. He seems to understand that without the linchpin of mothers and wives whose foundational job is to provide for the daily and generational reproduction of the worker, his factories would be empty and he would be shoeless. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much. Why don't we take first round of questions? We have some good time for discussion. Who wants to come up first? Go up first. Bandana.
Thank you both for really awesome presentations. So I have such a great view of the history of Binghamton now, having spent some time here as a student. Thank you for that. My question is for Diana. I'm wondering if you've also done, along with the work that you shared with us, some ethnographic conversations with former workers. In a sense, have you got a
Sound good?
Sounds good.
I have not had a chance to do ethnographies, in part because many of the people are dead or very, very old. There are a lot of recorded ethnographies, though, that I am accessing, but I haven't really looked at those in depth. I can say that what I didn't share from this is, as I've been going through these 82 issues of the magazine, which runs from 1919 to 1924, a nice little chunk of time there, it's really obvious that there was a need for this kind of disciplining because people were not conforming. And the need for the magazine is, I mean, the fact that the magazine existed was proof that there was enough dissent that there had to be a publication in order to smooth those waters and to get the workers to be compliant in those ways. And as I read them more and more, I'm able to track the letters that seem to be going back and forth, that have, like one letter that gets printed in the next issue, there's a response to that letter, not just from the company, but also from other workers. And in terms of the working class women and their children, and this comes up in the ethnic differences, the way that different ethnic groups are treated, because a lot of the times it has to do with the lack of development in the areas that are not West and South Endicott, the areas that are not populated by the white U.S.-born workers. And so there's, requests for parks and safer streets, and the way that the houses are developed both in the area where the Poles were and the other Eastern Europeans in Johnson City, as well as in North Endicott. So that I thought it's interesting. As I get deeper into it, these things are becoming more obvious to me, in part because I'm able to recognize more what to look for, and I see what is not said in that sense. It's fascinating. Yeah, I think I could spend a lot of time with these, but I have other things to do. And then in terms of internal strife along ethnic lines, I want to mention there was also a category in every single issue called Americanization and Citizenship. And it came up a lot. Learning the language. I mean, they wrote about how we can't work together if we don't speak the same language. We all have to be unified in this. There was a lot of discussion about that the company treats all the different ethnic workers fairly, and so the people need to too, which leads me to believe that they were not being treated fairly outside of the factory floor, and I question whether they really were inside the factory floor as well, though they were segregated into the groups, so there may have been less awareness of the inequities building there. Johnson's father made shoes, and he is proud, and I mean, he writes about it all the time. He was on the factory floor, and he was seen to be an industrious fellow, and really did rise up the ranks. He was greatly affected by the cigar strike in the, 1889, I think, you would know for sure, in Binghamton. And I think his father was in management, and he got the job here at Leicestershire Shoes, which was the predecessor to EJ, because the owner had sent a letter to his father saying, I need a good manager, or I need a good worker, can you come? And George F. came instead. And so it really was a combination of, I think he had some management experience in his youth in the sense of seeing his father deal with workers, and he just really thought that the unions were awful. I mean, festering, union men were just disloyal and not to be had anywhere close by. The unions tried to unionize the area, I believe 2, but maybe 3 times. And the first time it failed because there were 2 different unions trying to unionize, and Johnson recognized that this was a moment where he could control the outcome by forcing a vote where neither union got a majority, and so no union. Then the next time that there was a union vote was a little later, I think it was in the 40s, and George F. was so personally injured, emotionally injured by the fact that they'd even come to vote, that when they had their rally, he came and stood there, and the reports are that he actually cried. And there was not a chance in hell that, it was like, it didn't win by a landslide. I mean, there was no union at all. This is still very much an anti-union area. I mean, the people who have grown up here have only good things to say about EJ and don't know most of what I've told you. Yeah, I hope that answers your questions.
All right, let's take another round. Some of you guys asked about Kirk, and then Wendy and Mari. We'll go in that order and see what we got.
Another question for Christian on the enhanced weatherization. Sounds very interesting. I was wondering if you know what the source, sounds like a very energy intensive process to do the weatherization, so it might run into the same problem electric cars have. Source of electricity becomes problematic if you're using coal-fired power plants to generate electricity, then it reduces some of the benefits of having an electric car. So I was wondering if you knew more about that process itself and how they're powering the weatherization.
Well, we take the two other questions, and then we'll take them all together. Yeah.
So I have a somewhat different question. If I'm following Christian correctly, in its broader sense, I gather that you're advocating something like a shift of energy dependence to solar or to other alternatives. But what worries me about the advocacy of a shift as opposed to a more radical transformation that involves really meaningful conservation, right? As well as the willingness to discuss icky things like the reduction of the growth of the human population, right? Icky stuff like that. What worries me is that a shift of energy source won't necessarily go far enough to address a wide variety of other really significant forms of social injustice, right? So it belongs to me that there's no real environmental salvation from climate change that's not intimately accompanied by a transformation of consciousness with respect to institutions of grievous social injustice. Right? In other words, we could end up with a sustainable future that's no more desirable a future than the one that we're living in right now, right? Which for resilience of people on the planet, right, sucks. Right? So I'm wondering how it is that you think about how we're going to address all of the institutions that really got us into the mess that we're in right now in the first place, when we've essentially retained the same sort of, how do I want to put this, the same kind of ideological or psychic paradigm, just by shifting to alternatives. So this works.
And Mari?
I have kind of a long question.
Can you
But I'm
concise?
I agree that we should be actually, science should move ahead. We should be studying, we should not, we should be finding new forms and ways to solve the problem. But here's my question, what this is probing is a little bit. The system itself has its own rules. You know, it actually is compelled by two motions, which is extraction of power, but the other is anarchy and competition. That is driving, that is actually setting limits to what exactly how we can change it. And it's not just the actual system, the economic system, but think of the fact that everything is fossil fuel. The very tools that are embedded in the system as it has evolved is completely permeated with that aspect, okay? So you're dealing with a combination of a system that has its own rules and actually will break down if it doesn't follow those rules. That's one thing. So how do you do this without an actual radical change to the system? You know, I thought it would be an actual revolution, which is arguing is not necessary. I would like to close that further.
What revolution? What was it?